Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Athletic HQ here in central London. This is Adam Leventhal, ready for a big day. Plenty of twists and turns and all that, you know, the lingo, and we are here to cover deadline day every step of the way. If you didn't know, our central London office is stone's throw from the River Thames, so we're right at the heart of matters. And there are plenty of agents, I know full well, having meetings in little sort of spots around the capital at the moment, just trying to get deals done. And one little thing that we do know is that often there are many little sort of meetings that happen around train stations. People come in on the Eurostar and things like that, have a quick meeting, and then head off and try and get those deals done. So we're going to try and sort of cut through the fiction and bring you the facts here on The Athletic. We are live on Twitter, we're live on Facebook and YouTube, and we're going to be hearing from a whole host of our reporters, our dedicated reporters on The Athletic. We cover all the 20 Premier League teams, as you well know, the big guns in the Championship and beyond in the Football League as well, and also around Europe, dedicated reporters in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and being The Athletic, of course, we have all the bases covered in the US as well. And beyond that, beyond football, all of the US sports too. If you want to subscribe to The Athletic, head on to theathletic.com and you can be part of the action. But we're going to have live shows for you throughout the day. We'll pop up on the socials as well in between too, speaking to our reporters and just keeping you abreast of what's going on with the deals that happen. And also, we know full well that some of those deals don't happen, and that can also be a story as well. Players that don't leave can almost be as big a story as those that do arrive. Just to let you know what's coming up on this show, we will be hearing from David Ornstein very, very shortly indeed. We'll also try and check in with the situation at Newcastle. Obviously, this is the first summer window since the big Saudi takeover at St. James's Park, and we will just see if they're going to be spending any money on this final day. We know that it's not been quite as many people will have expected on Tyneside. We'll see what's happening at Leicester as well. We should be joined by Rob Tanner. Also, Brentford, they were in action against Crystal Palace. They may well be making a signing. What's going on at Aston Villa as well? It's tough times for Steven Gerrard. Laurie Whitwell should be joining us as well, just to keep us posted on what's going on at Manchester United as well. And we'll tell you what's going on here in the newsroom. I must be honest, it is quite early in the newsroom here at The Athletic. So there aren't as many people here right now as there will be later on in the day. But we will be able to just grab people throughout the day, check in with them. And we're right near the lifts as well. So we can have a little look on who's arriving as they come in. I wonder who's coming through those doors any minute now. This is a bit like stars in their eyes. No, they've decided to go to another floor. Doesn't matter. Right, let's check in with our first reporter. And it is the big gun, of course, on deadline day. David Ornstein is ready to join us. How are you, David?
I'm okay, thank you. Sorry, I was just checking my phone there, which may be a theme of this live appearance and throughout the day. So I'm unapologetic about that. But yeah, all good. Looking forward to this tumultuous window finally coming to an end, because it's been thrilling, exhausting, hectic, exciting, all of the below and above. And yeah, let's get stuck into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for if you're watching at home, obviously the place to be at the moment is the live blog on The Athletic. We'll keep you posted on exactly what's going on every step of the way. And one of the first posts on this deadline day, early doors, was from David himself regarding Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Big move, and it's been a difficult time for him off the field. But this could be a significant move on deadline day from Barcelona back to the capital, not back with Arsenal, but to Chelsea. David.
Yeah, we can tell our audiences, Adam, that Chelsea are now on the verge of an agreement to sign Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from Barcelona. Fairly extraordinary, given that only in January he joined Barcelona from Arsenal. His contract at Arsenal was terminated, and it seems to be the start of happier times ahead for him. He did well. He helped Barcelona to qualify for the Champions League, but their financial situation And the arrival of Robert Lewandowski has opened the door for Aubameyang to depart. Chelsea need a striker. They're in need of goals. Thomas Tuchel has worked with him previously. And talks have been ongoing for a number of weeks. They've looked positive, they've looked negative. And there was the added complication that we revealed on The Athletic yesterday, that Aubameyang, in the violent robbery that he was a victim of in his home in the Catalan city on Sunday, suffered a broken jaw that is likely to keep him out for a number of weeks. The exact duration will depend on whether he undergoes surgery or not. If he does, he may be back sooner. If he doesn't, it may take a little bit longer. Chelsea then had to consider whether it was worth signing him with the World Cup not too far away, or waiting until January to reassess the situation. But they've decided to go forward with it. So the latest proposal that I've been told is worth in the region of 7.5 million euros. Obviously, that's vastly reduced on the 15 million pounds they were prepared to spend before this latest unfortunate incident with him physically, plus Marcus Alonso going in the opposite direction. So we'll see how Barcelona respond to that. The proposed contract for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is 2 years fixed with an additional 12 months that would be contingent on the percentage of performances he makes, percentage of appearances he makes in that second year. So that bit needs to be finalized as well. He's in Barcelona as we speak, but if the agreements are reached, then presumably he'll fly over and Chelsea will try to complete this deal, which could be the most high profile of deadline day.
And it's an interesting deal as well, because it has been sort of bubbling, hasn't it? And it was very difficult to tell. Obviously, we had the details of it on The Athletic, but it was very difficult to tell in this sort of, not necessarily a trolley dash at Chelsea, but it has been sort of, oh, let's go for him, let's go for him, let's go for him. There's been all sorts of targets. So it's an interesting one that this has actually developed and is coming to a head now.
Yeah, I would argue actually that Chelsea have had a lot of irons in a lot of fires. Yeah. They've been linked with players who they have not actually been in for. And they have made inquiries for many that they're not going to end up going for. One, to see whether it's possible. Two, to know the value of the market and what they should or shouldn't be paying. Contingency plans if one thing or another happens with their existing players or other targets. And what they've actually ended up with is what we should focus on, which is Kalidou Koulibaly, a top signing from Napoli, Raheem Sterling, a top signing from Manchester City, Carney Chukwuemeka, a top young signing from Aston Villa, Marc Cucurella, fantastic player from Brighton and Hove Albion. And now it looks like they'll be getting Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who's one of Europe's foremost strikers, even at the age of 33, a guaranteed goal scorer who has done well for this current Chelsea manager when they were together at Borussia Dortmund. And Chelsea might not be done yet. They still do have a couple more inquiries in, particularly for the holding midfield position. They've explored the possibility of signing Edson Alvarez from Ajax, the holding midfielder. We don't know if that will come to fruition, especially because Ajax will be extremely reluctant to sell another key player. But yeah, it's been the most remarkable window for Chelsea. So much activity for the new regime at Stamford Bridge. Of course, mistakes will have been made. There will be regrets about pursuits that didn't come to fruition, especially in central defence. Remember all those days with Jules Koundé, Frenzo Kimpembe, Matthias de Ligt, Nathan Ake, and Frankie de Jong was a target as well. But I think once the window closes, they'll be pleased with their business and they'll be determined to start putting things right on the pitch, because it's been a bit of a tricky start so far.
Yeah, that's a good point to mention as well. They're coming off the back of a defeat against Southampton. They've lost against Leeds as well. So many managers, and I mean, maybe we'll save this for a show later on in the day. So many managers, even though when it was differently set up, they said, oh, well, we're losing ground, have commented this year that it is so disruptive to have the transfer deadline after the season has started. And for Thomas Tuchel in particular, you know, you throw in the takeover and the disruption that has brought, he will be very relieved, I would have thought, that it can all be settled. But he's under some pressure, isn't he? And he's been showing it as well.
Well, they all say this, Adam, these clubs, but they all then use the extra days to their own advantage, or at least try to. And so if you had seen the window close earlier, Thomas Tuchel would not have had the players that he wanted to work with. And so, yeah, in an ideal world, the window would shut earlier and all clubs would have all the players they want, but it's not an ideal world. Of course, it's disruptive. And, you know, when it closed those 2 years, I think, before the season started, it felt better in terms of the integrity and the professional balance. A little bit less dramatic for us going towards the end of August, but seeing as that's when my birthday falls, I preferred it. But on the whole, yeah, it's created a bit of a mess for many clubs, and yeah, they'll be eager for Southampton. Sorry, I was thinking about a potential Southampton transfer. September the 2nd to come, so they can really focus on the season ahead. Of course, a disjointed season because slap bang in the middle of it comes the Qatar World Cup, then the January transfer window, and then they resume action. So it's going to be a really complicated campaign ahead, but for us, a very enthralling one.
Let's deal with the short term, the remainder of today. Obviously, you know, big connections and a big following of Arsenal fans traditionally for you, David, as well as being across all of the big news accepted. I just wanted to ask you about the situation at Arsenal. We heard from Mikel Arteta yesterday evening saying that, yes, we would like to do some business, particularly in midfield. Is that realistic on this final day?
Yeah, it's realistic in terms of the fact that they'll try to do something, and they've made that pretty clear. Whether they will be able to complete what they're trying, we'll have to wait and see. Things can happen very quickly, more so on a loan basis than permanent, but I'm talking generically here, people listening, not necessarily for Arsenal. We don't know what they're going to attempt to pull off at this point in time. Of course, the positional focus shifted somewhat from a wide player to midfield once we reported that there had been a significant injury for Mohamed El-Neni on top of an existing injury for Thomas Partey. And suddenly number 6, the holding central midfielder, became the target. Now, Arsenal have, of course, been linked with Yuri Tielemans all summer, and I've reported on a number of occasions that all of the key decision makers at Arsenal have been all in on him in favour of that signing, happy with it. But these things are more complicated, Adam, because you need to agree a fee, you need to agree personal terms, you need potentially a player to leave. That would have been earlier in the window. Now, of course, the situation has changed at Arsenal. And the noises we're getting from around the game, whether that's Arsenal, the player, and other contacts, is that Yuri Tielemans to Arsenal is very unlikely to happen. In fact, Yuri Tielemans is unlikely to move at the time that we broadcast this. Again, subject to change. You just never know what might materialize late on, and money often talks. But there is no sort of movement on that front as things stand. And that will raise the possibility of other players. I've seen names thrown around in the media this morning. A number of clubs looking for a holding midfielder. Douglas Luiz of Aston Villa has been linked with all of these clubs. And Greg Evans, our colleague who is the correspondent for The Athletic covering Aston Villa, reported that Aston Villa do not intend to sell Douglas Luiz before the deadline. Again, let's see. He's only got a year to go on his contract. There'll be lots of other options as well that Arsenal and other clubs are considering. People will watch this and say, well, he's sitting on the fence. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And the truth is we don't know right now, but we'll make the calls and we'll ask the question and see what comes of it. And equally, there is no guarantee that Arsenal or others who are in the market for a midfielder at this late stage, Liverpool, for example, will be able to do anything before the cutoff.
David, what I'm going to do, because we've got loads to get through, is I'll let you jump off, but do stay sort of within the system, and I can bring you back in later on in the show. I'll let you sort of go off and check your phone for a few moments, because it's interesting you mentioned about the transfer window as a whole. I just wanted to point you in the direction of the Athletic Football Podcast, which has gone in depth, often featuring David, in on this current transfer window and the amount of money that has been spent by English clubs in the Premier League, pretty much outweighing the combined spends of the other big 5 European leagues. So there's only 4 of them, including the Premier League. Mark Chapman, Matt Slater, Phil Buckingham featuring on that one. Go to your usual podcast places and pick that one up. It's ad-free on The Athletic. Of course, if you want to subscribe to The Athletic and you're watching this for the first time, you've never heard of us, and you are thinking, I want to get involved, go to theathletic.com. Okay, there was a few people mentioned there by David that we will try and check in with Greg Evans in particular about Aston Villa. I want to find out about that situation. Jay Harris, as we were talking to David there, actually walked into the newsroom. He did actually eventually emerge from the lift, and we'll be talking to him about Brentford. He's just sat down and he's making himself at home. Peter Rutzler's in the building as well, which is always good to see. There's always something weird going on when Peter Rutzler's in the building. So we will see what's happening with Fulham, which is going well at the moment. Right, let's talk, not weird at all, about Newcastle and bring in George Culkin. George, a very good evening to you. First and foremost, that we concentrate on the deadline, but obviously there are football matches, and that has complicated things as well. Have you got over last night at Anfield in that last minute defeat?
Well, if you're wishing me good evening, that means that's even more added time than there was at Anfield. So, bit of a cruel reminder there, Adam.
I'm delirious. I do apologise already, and it is whatever time it is, 8:30 in the morning, 10 to 9, 14 hours to go, all that malarkey. So let's talk about Newcastle, and obviously, you can reflect as a whole on the transfer window. And last night we saw one of the signings that is hopefully going to make things better at St James's Park, and that was Isak scoring and looking very comfortable indeed on his debut. It was an impressive start, wasn't it?
Yeah, sensational. Yeah, very, very good. Had a long wait to get his to get the go ahead to play, but made an instant impact. Looked really good. And yeah, you talk about the summer. It feels like another transformative window. If you take this year as a whole, 2022 as a whole, they've spent well over £200 million. I like what they've done and how they've done it. There's been very much a sense of building what they already had at the club in terms of spirit and belief, and but also kind of bringing in players who have very much been signed for the future too, who can play now but for the future. You look at Isak, you look at Sven Botman, who didn't play last night. You look at Bruno Guimaraes, and it's almost like there's two sorts of strategies going on at the club, but they've spent a lot of money again, more money I think than they intended to originally this summer. But very positive, yeah. So if you can kind of weed out the disappointment from last night, it's all very positive at the moment.
And for people watching that aren't immersed as you are in Newcastle and that weird and wonderful world, let's be brutally honest, that would have been expecting more of a splurge. What are the reasons why? And just explain the sort of the financial structure there. Yes, they are backed by billions, but you can't necessarily just go and do that straight away, can you?
No, the restrictions from financial fair play are there. They could spend more money if they wanted to, but the problem with that is that there's then less money to spend further down the line. So they're very conscious of that. They have set their ambitions incredibly high. They want to be challenging with Manchester United and Liverpool in due course in a few years' time. That's a ferocious ambition, and to get there, they'll have to spend a lot of money. But they're not bringing in commercial money yet. They're not bringing in that sort of stuff. They have a new chief executive who only started within the last couple of weeks. It'll be his job to start doing those deals. That side of the club has really flatlined under Mike Ashley, because their commercial and marketing was Sports Direct, effectively. It was Ashley's company. So down the line, they'll be bringing in lots of money, and they'll be able to reinvest that. But yes, there have been limitations. The other thing is that they didn't want to sort of do some of the mad deals that we've seen clubs do when they've got taken over that have then really unbalanced their squads. They talk a lot. They do reference clubs like Man City wanting to be a club like Man City, but they definitely don't want to be a club like Everton. They don't want to do what they've done and make those mistakes. So I think it's been pretty smart what they've done so far. You can certainly argue that all the players that they've brought in have worked for what they wanted to do. People talked about Chris Wood in January costing £25 million, but Wood then played in all of those games that when Newcastle turned around their awful start to last season and then stayed up. So it's been impressive. Yes, it's been about building on the spirit that there was there, the sort of the cliches that you'd used about the honesty of the team. And about being committed. They want people to buy into what they're doing, because it's a very interesting period where they can't offer European football and they can't offer ridiculous wages because they're trying to protect the structure that they already have. So they're asking people to buy into what they're looking to achieve.
And just finally, are we expecting anything else to be signed on the dotted line today?
Well, Eddie House said last night that they would sort of count up the bruises after Anfield and see what's what. It's no secret that they've been looking for a midfield player too. They're very conscious of John Joe Shelby's injury that's likely to keep him out for the first half of the season. That is an area they've been looking. I do think they overstretched on Isak in terms of how much money they wanted to spend. Prior to that, someone at the top of the club had said that ideally they'd be making 2 permanent signings, but I think that's now less likely. They're certainly still looking in midfield. A lot of the players you already mentioned with David just earlier are players that they're looking at too. They've been talking to Chelsea about loans. They've talked to Leicester and others. So I think it's about sort of taking a little step back this morning, seeing how things lie. I know they'll be making calls because they always make calls, and perhaps something can shake loose. At the moment, I wouldn't say it was definite though.
Okay, George, brilliant. Thank you very much. As always, we may well see you later on in the day. And it's interesting, isn't it? George mentioning there, they will be making calls. Often it is the calls that are made and the sort of the tentative bids that are made that never come to fruition, which are almost as interesting as the deals that are done. And what we'll try and do, obviously, at The Athletic is to try and tell you the story of some of those deals that came close and didn't necessarily get over the line, which we can do in some of the detailed writing that we do throughout the year. It isn't just on deadline day that we kick into gear. It is really throughout the season, throughout the summer as well, when the football's not necessarily going on, that we can really pick out some of the big stories and the longer reads for you. Okay, one of those teams that was mentioned there by George actually was Leicester City. And Rob Tanner can join us now. Very good morning to you, Rob. Now, usually the form with Leicester City is sell a big gun for 50 million, reinvest it, jobs are good, and we'll have another one next year, and it all works out hunky-dory. It's been a different story this year, hasn't it? Just give us the sort of the state of play at the King Power right now.
It's been a different story for the last 2 summers because they didn't sell a big gun, and that's been part of the problem going into this year. They didn't sell a big gun. They had a net spend of 55 million, which is the record for the club in a transfer window. And in that time, obviously, we know the financial problems that they've suffered. The owners are in the tourism and leisure industries, which has been massively affected by the pandemic. The club's revenue, although it was up in the last accounts, hasn't grown at the same rate as the wages now that they're paying out for these players. And 5 of those players came in last summer without any exits. So they went into this transfer window trying to reduce the wage bill, get a few of the fringe players off the books, get rid of some of the players that Brendan Rodgers doesn't see a future for at the club, and then reinvest that money. But it's been a frozen market for them because that tier of clubs that would take those players, they're having financial issues as well. So there's no buyers for them. So in the end, and normally they sell one big asset, and they've had to do it late on because it's for fun, and they didn't plan to do that this year. But obviously that has happened. Chelsea's come in and, as confirmed yesterday, £70 million. And that leaves them now with such a short space of time to bring anybody in.
And what are they going to try and do to at least fill that gap? Obviously, they're not going to reinvest all that money, but they want to fill the gap left by Fofana.
Yeah, but without Faze, the centre back at Reims, that seems like that's going to happen today. So at least they'll get one centre back in. They're hopeful of doing another one as well, and they've been in talks for a winger because that's another problem area. Jeremy Boga from Atalanta. And the irony there is they originally, Brendan wanted to do Adam Leventhal on a permanent, which would have been £14 million. And he actually went to Atalanta because they couldn't do that at the time because they didn't have the funds. Now they've got the funds. He's off their charts now. Obviously, he's moved on. So they're looking at Jeremy Boga.
And in terms of how the Leicester fans will view this, are they understanding of the off-field situation, or are they thinking, well, hang on a minute, if we're going to properly lose ground here? And Brendan Rodgers has spoken about it as well quite publicly that we're having to sort of, I don't know, get used to a new status, which is in the lower reaches rather than really challenging as they were famously not that long ago.
Well, he said the club had been destabilised, and I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, the fans are concerned. There's obviously a lot of worry. They were expecting a bit of business. It was quite clear that some of the players that have been at the club aren't good enough for the level that Leicester want to be at. But now it's all about what business they can do today. And then after that, Rodgers has said that then he would reevaluate what it should be expected, what the targets are going to be for this season. At the moment, where the position they are in the league, I know it's early days and only 4 games. The target has got to be make sure you're stable, get that stabilisation in the Premier League and on and off the pitch, and then push again next year.
Rob, we appreciate your time as always. I'm sure we will check in with you a little bit later on to find out what's going on at Leicester. Now, there are a few reporters that I can see just buzzing around in the newsroom, and one of them is Jay, and he's actually going to just come and join us and tell us exactly what's going on at Brentford. Just come on in. There you go. Look, we can see each other. How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you doing?
You're in early. I like it.
Yeah, early and keen.
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't expect anything less. So tell me exactly what's going on with Brentford on this deadline day, because Thomas Frank is organised, the whole club's organised, it's well run, the recruitment's good and all that sort of stuff. But there is obviously activity potentially going to be happening today.
Yeah, definitely. I was told a couple of weeks ago there were 2 names to keep an eye on from a Brentford perspective, and that was Freiburg's Kevin Schade and Michaela Mudryk from Shakhtar Donetsk. And Mudryk is a player they've really liked for a really long time. Tried to sign him in January, but it didn't work out. Earlier in the summer, it looked like he was going to join Bayer Leverkusen, and that deal broke down. So basically, I was told that yesterday morning, Brentford have kind of sat and had a conversation and gone, do you know what? Want to make one final push for Mudryk. He's a player we really, really like. And they basically, I don't think they've submitted an official bid yet, but they've told Shakhtar they're willing to pay a club record fee in the region of around 30 million euros.
And that's quite a big step forward, isn't it, for the club?
Yeah, definitely. To actually pull it back even wider, this would be the 4th time within a year that they've broken their transfer record. If it does go through, done it twice already this summer, getting Aaron Hickey from Bologna for £14 million, then getting Keane Lewis Potter from Hull for £16 million. So a club who, have been in the Championship and League One for so long, now they're in the Premier League, prepared to spend big money.
Obviously, we cover all the big clubs in the Premier League. Brentford are, relatively new amongst the in the big league at the top table, but they're a disruptor, aren't they? They are doing things differently and they're doing things very well. Just tell us how they've sort of settled into this new campaign, because a lot of people will say, oh, it's the, they say it in music, the difficult second album. This is going to be tough for them, but they seem to be showing no real sort of problems dealing with the pressure.
Yeah, I think obviously what most people are going to look at for Brentford's summer transfer window is about Eriksen. And it almost feels a little bit strange that people have kind of forgotten about Eriksen, which kind of tells you how well they've kind of adjusted without him. Eriksen was always a bit of a one-off. You almost had to kind of like compartmentalize that from the rest of their business. I was at their game against Crystal Palace on Tuesday evening. They came back, I think, for the 3rd time in 5 games this season to get a point. And, I was kind of thinking, why do they keep coming back? Of course, tactics is a part of it. But I mean, their strength and depth this year really kind of stands out. They brought on Mikael Damsgaard off the bench, someone that, lots of English fans are familiar with from his exploits at the Euros. Brought on Josh Da Silva, who's had a really good start to the season, Johan Visser. So I just think they already had a really young and talented squad, and I just got a little bit more strength and depth.
And when are we expecting this sort of deal to be done today? I know you said that there's not been an official bid made, but is it sort of it's gathering pace, and you'd expect it to be done relatively soon? Or
I wouldn't say I'd expect it to be done. It's going to be a really, really tricky deal to pull off for so many different reasons. Obviously, the fact that the players, based over in Ukraine, that adds one layer of complexity to it. I think Shakhtar have already shown they've been quite reluctant to sell Mudryk. He's 21 years old. He's from Ukraine. He's kind of like a bit of the crown jewel, if it were. And they made negotiations difficult in January. The move broke down to Bayern Leverkusen. So I think Brentford are really going to have to pull a rabbit out of the hat, as Thomas Frank said the other day, to even get the deal done. So very unlikely, but they thought, why not go all in?
Perfect. Jay, thank you very much. You head on.
Thank you.
Get back into the newsroom. Thank you very much indeed. Right. So obviously, as we mentioned, we cover all the the big six and all that sort of stuff, but Brentford in depth, other clubs that maybe don't get the spotlight from some other platforms, but we cover them in depth on The Athletic, as you well know. Two of those clubs, perhaps, one who had a very good result last night was Southampton, and we'll check in with Jacob Tanswell very, very shortly just to get the latest on Southampton on this deadline day. But let's start off with Brighton, and Andy Naylor can just bring us up to speed with what's going on down at the Amex.
Hello everyone, Andy Naylor here, Brighton correspondent. I'm told by sources last night that efforts are ongoing to add a couple of players to Graham Potter's squad before the deadline. Those efforts revolve mainly around two players. Billy Gilmore, Chelsea's Scottish international midfielder, a player Brighton have liked for a long time. They're still trying to get a permanent deal over the line with Chelsea. They can't bring him in on loan because they already have Levi Colwill in on loan from Stamford Bridge. And under Premier League regulations, you cannot loan two players from the same club. The other player they're still interested in adding to their forward options, Christian Kouame, Fiorentina's 24-year-old Ivory Coast international. Now that deal last week was looking quite likely, until Brighton sold Neil Maupay to Everton. The price has gone up since then, but they haven't given up hope entirely of coming to a loan-to-buy arrangement.
So that's Andy Naylor just bringing us up to speed with what's going on at Brighton. You can read his writing on The Athletic. Head to theathletic.com. Let's check in with Southampton, as promised now.
Southampton are set to be one of the busier teams in transfer deadline day, with a number of players coming in, but also a number of players potentially heading for the exit door too. Samuel Doozy and Juan Laris from Manchester City are set to have their agreements finalised later today, as well as Ainsley Maitland-Niles, who was signed on a season-long loan, with Southampton retaining the option to buy. Cody Gakpo has been the transfer saga of recent days, with Southampton confident that they can strike a deal, having had a bid rejected earlier this summer. But I believe there is still a little way to go in terms of Southampton matching their valuation of the winger. He obviously played last night in PSV's game, so there still is yet to be a solution found, but we have to keep an eye on that, and that looks like it will be the big story of Southampton's incomings. In terms of outgoings, Jack Stevens will be heading to Bournemouth. He's just currently having a medical this morning, as well as Jan Bednarek, who's been linked to Aston Villa and West Ham. It'll be interesting to see now Jack Stevens has gone as a centre-back to see if Jan Bednarek also follows him out the exit door. Orel May, who's set to finalise a 3-year deal at Girona, and Nathan Redmond is also pushing for a move elsewhere. Theo Walcott as well, he is potentially someone that's a plus to requirements. However, I understand that as of yesterday evening, there had been no offers made for the winger.
Brilliant work from Jacob. Covers Southampton and plenty going on in and out at St Mary's. We will keep you posted on what's going on there throughout the day. Just a quick word on Watford. Obviously, we said that we do cover beyond the Premier League, and Watford, yes, they are down in the Championship at the moment, but they do have two huge saleable assets as well, sort of burning a hole in their pocket at the moment. It is quite difficult if you're a Watford fan on this deadline day, because Ismail Assar and Joao Pedro, who combined so well in their last victory against Middlesbrough on Tuesday night, they are wanted by other clubs. Watford are trying to keep hold of both of them. Obviously, there's no intention to want to sell them at the moment, and if they can keep hold of them, they will. And all I'm hearing this morning is that nothing significant is happening in terms of bids. We know that Aston Villa were strongly interested in Ismail Assar. That deal did kick on. They were thinking about spending 25 million plus 5 million add-ons, but it did actually break down. There was potentially going to be Cameron Archer going from Aston Villa to Watford in return as a loan deal. But as it stands, although I know that Ismail Assar's representatives may well still be pushing for a deal today, nothing is moving at the moment. And for João Pedro, I know that there's been a report online regarding Everton making a bid over the last 24 hours. I haven't got anything to suggest that there's anything in that at the moment, but I have contacted people at Watford this morning to find out if anything is happening with Everton. I would be very, very surprised if João Pedro would go anywhere. However, clubs, especially when you drop out of the Premier League, you have to look at big bids. At the moment, they were dealing with Newcastle, you remember, 25 million plus 5 million add-ons. That took it up to 30 million. I think anyone at Watford will know that he is probably now worth a lot more than that. So if anyone was to come in with a huge bid on this deadline day, then that might push it over the line. But I would be very surprised. They are also looking to bring in a right wing back as well. So we'll keep you posted on that. Just check out my socials in particular. As Watford fans tend to do. And they get in touch and tell me exactly what they think of me as well, which is always nice to hear. Okay, right, let's check in away from the small fry of Watford to one of the big guns, one of the big six, or they're hoping to get back amongst the big six. That is Manchester United. Laurie Whitwell is on the line, fresh-faced, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go. So, Laurie, a very good morning to you. What is happening today at Manchester United? Are we expecting anything moving in or out?
I mean, there's movement in and out, but everything I think has already been trailed. So you've got Ahmad completing his loan move to Sunderland on an exit. Tahith Chong in talks with Birmingham City over a possible permanent move away. They're the kind of still live ones. But in terms of incomings, Anthony obviously is the big one. €100 million signing, expected to get his international clearance sorted, hopefully in time for the Arsenal game on Sunday. Martin Dubravka is the other incoming, the goalkeeper from Newcastle, on a loan initially with a potential obligation to buy, but he's got to play quite a lot of Premier League games for that to happen. And James Garner on an exit as well, Everton, as we reported yesterday. So it's kind of stuff that's already been, trailed really.
And how much excitement is this Anthony signing bringing? I mean, how excited are Manchester United fans getting just in general at the moment? It's tough, isn't it? But hopefully this will bring a little bit of just a little burst of excitement at the very least. Yeah,
he's a player that Erik ten Hag definitely wants. That's why United have gone to €100 million earlier in the transfer window. They were saying no to a lesser fee that Ajax were demanding. So clearly circumstances have changed, and I think fans therefore will get excited by the fact that you've got a new offensive player coming in. Ten Hag was saying that he will play on the right. So you think that would be a bit of a shuffle about. So Marcus Rashford maybe will get more of a chance through the middle with Anthony Martial still being injured, and the kind of, I guess, the debate about how Cristiano Ronaldo exactly fits into the team. Anthony gives them another option, and clearly he's someone that, Erik ten Hag knows very well. And Ten Hag's spoken about the fact that he can perform his requests off the ball to a T. Got aggressive. He's very aggressive, tenacity. So that's why he wants to bring him in, and fans will naturally get excited about a player that's costing a lot of money coming in. Although, as we say, it is more than what United originally intended to pay.
There was a fascinating article on The Athletic. I think it dropped yesterday morning, if memory serves. They all blur into one at the moment, on Cristiano Ronaldo. And obviously this long summer window, there was an strong expectation that he was going to be leaving. He's staying. Seems as if he's been sort of offered around, for want of a better expression. I mean, what's your understanding of the situation? And if he, indeed does stay, how it all works with him?
Yeah, it's been the big drama, I suppose, of Man United's summer window. It's been a shadow that's kind of loomed over everything, really. And as we've reported previously, I think Erik ten Hag originally felt, I'm keeping this guy, I can work with him for sure. Then, he came back to Carrington and clearly he wanted to leave. So the mood that he was kind of bringing around the place was affecting the team dynamic. So, he's not started the last two games and United have won both of them. United have made more signings, so has that encouraged Cristiano Ronaldo to look at Man United as an option for him this season, even though they haven't got Champions League football? As you said, Adam, he's clearly been offered around to a lot of different clubs with Champions League football, but the fact that he'd cost an awful lot of money, the fact that he'd changed the dynamic of any squad that he went into, has been a kind of consideration for these clubs, and so far hasn't happened. Saudi Arabia is the only sort of opportunity for him. Al Hilal, we were told, made a decent offer to Man United, a mega money offer to Cristiano Ronaldo to go. That was turned down, but there's still been conversations about Saudi Arabia. But I'd be amazed if anything came to it in this deadline day. So yeah, the idea is that Ronaldo will stay. Erik ten Hag was very clear about that. He's been quite clear about that throughout, really, publicly at least. But I do feel that in recent days, Ronaldo has kind of perhaps reintegrated a bit more with the squad and kind of felt, well, okay, if I'm going to be here, I need to at least get my head around it. So we'll see. But I mean, a player of that caliber, he hasn't sat on the bench, ever before in his career. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, he's not the sort of character just to sort of toe the line, is he? I mean,
No.
and quite rightly so. I suppose some people would say, if you are Cristiano Ronaldo, you are the big deal. You're the big cheese. So you want to be involved in the big moments. And just a final word. Obviously, we were talking about the last 2 nights of Premier League action and domestic action in the UK as a whole. United playing tonight against Leicester City. The complications of that, if they were to try and do anything, I suppose, for people that aren't necessarily au fait with how it all works, you can still be spinning plates on one hand and getting deals done whilst the game is going on. But it's not the easiest, is it?
No, I mean, you'd ideally want the managers to be involved in it, right? And obviously not actually in the discussions and the negotiations, but say, there's a kind of debate about, do we really push the belt out for this player? Can we quickly swap this player for that? So Aaron Wan-Bissaka has been one in recent days where it's looked like, Crystal Palace and West Ham have made inquiries, that's for certain. And it looked like maybe he could go and United might bring in a different right back. So Serginho Dest is one that Erik ten Hag had worked with at Ajax, who's at Barcelona now. So that was a kind of debate that was going on. Ten Hag drew a line under it yesterday. Wan-Bissaka will be staying. I think he's been encouraged to kind of look at him as a longer term player. He'd only seen him a little bit in pre-season because he was injured. And Serginho Dest has gone to AC Milan now. So that was one that you'd think, okay, if that was still a live issue, Ten Hag might be a bit frustrated that he's got a game tonight rather than kind of dedicating his time to it. But I think they've drawn a line under it, and he can focus fully on the game at Leicester.
Okay, Laurie, thank you very much indeed. And you will be able to follow Laurie throughout the day. Of course, there'll be a match discussion around that game. And if anything does break as far as Manchester United are concerned, our team of Manchester United reporters will be in the mix and telling you exactly what's going on. I did mention Peter Rutzler earlier on. And, oh, look at that. Here he is. Hello, Peter. How are you?
I'm fine. I was fine.
Come on in. Make yourself home. Come on.
Stop calling me weird live on air. It's unbelievable, man.
Well, why did I say weird? Weird and wonderful. I think weird and wonderful because it was it Fabio Carvalho that was happening.
That was like one of the last ones. Neco Williams came in, and then before that was Nat Chalabar and Domingos Quino, which we sort of collaborated on. So yeah, weird things do happen, to be fair. So yeah.
But also wonderful things are happening as well at Fulham at the moment. Relatively speaking, another victory, and Marco Silva's sort of plan to try and stabilise Fulham in the Premier League has started well, hasn't it?
It has. They've started far better than they have in their 2 previous Premier League seasons. We've seen them play a really combative, sort of pugnacious style, and they've taken points off Liverpool. Wolves 2 home wins, Brighton and Brentford, which I think is the same amount of home wins that they got in all of 2019-20. So a really positive start, 8 points on the board. They've recruited, defensively, they've brought in some good defenders. Midfielders too. João Palhinha's been fantastic, a real transformative signing. Now they're looking for some attacking depth, I think, especially today. They've been unlucky with injuries. Manor Solomon's out long term. Harry Wilson also, both knee injuries. So if they can get some enforcements today, and I think they will, then they'll look even stronger.
What's on the agenda? What's pending?
Well, so we're expecting Layvin Kurzawa to sign from PSG on loan. Joe Bryan joined Nice last night, left back. And then also William, we're expecting that to go through on a free transfer, the former Chelsea and Arsenal winger. player who can add some depth in those wide positions, which Fulham have lacked in recent weeks. There's a few youngsters set to go out on loan. There's a few others as well who haven't been involved in pre-season that we think Fulham are trying to move on. So Anthony Knockaert, Josh Onoma, Ivan Cavallero, Terence Congolo, they can move those on. They'd be delighted, I think. And then also there could be others. We're expecting Fulham to try and get an alternative option to Alexander Mitrovic in attack. And we've seen how fantastic he's been this season. He's taken to the Premier League, carried that form on from last year in the Championship. But of course, there's no backup at the moment because Rodrigo Muniz has joined Middlesbrough on loan. So Ben Brereton Diaz is one that popped up on the radar last night. Fulham moving in for him. There are reports in Portugal and Holland about Carlos Vinicius potentially, which we're looking into at the moment. So there's a lot going on, and I expect it to be a really busy day at Fulham.
And I know, when teams come up into the Premier League, often they've got the excuse of saying, look, stay with us, have a great season, and then maybe you can kick on and go elsewhere. With Mitrovic, I suppose, there's been some big clubs looking for players that can score goals. And Mitrovic is just sort of stuck at Fulham. He's happy and seems to be playing well and enjoying his football. And there's never really been any suggestion that he'll go elsewhere.
No, not really this summer. I mean, I spoke to him after the Arsenal game where he scored his 100th goal for the club. And you could just see from how he talks about the club, the words he uses. He called it a beautiful club. Previously, he said he loves the passion and the soul of the place. He's sort of the king of Craven Cottage. He's well loved by the fans. That's a mutual feeling. And he's playing under a coach that's getting the best out of him at the moment. His form's fantastic. And with the World Cup coming up, I don't think he'd want to disrupt that at all and maintain that rhythm. And, he's very much a club legend at Fulham now. And there's always that debate about whether he should step up from a smaller club to a bigger club. But I think right now where he's at, his best form is coming for Fulham, and he's in a good place. And Fulham rely on him, need him, love him. And I think that looks set to continue for now.
And just one final question on a club that you also cover as well in Bournemouth. Obviously changed, or they're in the process of changing. Their manager Scott Parker has gone, and they bounced back with a clean sheet after the hammering at Anfield. In terms of what's happening down there, and I suppose on two fronts in terms of transfers, but also managerially, what are your expectations as you spin both plates?
I think with Bournemouth, they will continue with their recruitment strategy, the way their structure works with Richard Hughes as technical director, working with Neil Blake, the chief executive. Their structure means they can continue with some of the recruitment planning that they had. And that
criticism would have smarted, wouldn't it? Ultimately, from Scott Parker, just saying, we're not up to it and things like that. That just has a knock-on effect, not only on the owner, who's a little bit more distant, but on the likes of Richard Hughes.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think across the club, it becomes a difficult atmosphere everywhere, including in the dressing room as well. For the players, once you hear those comments that you're not quite good enough, it's always a very fine line between trying to get those reinforcements in, which will help the team, and then also not undermining the squad at the same time. So I think the way Bournemouth are structured means they can continue to do what they need to do. They can continue with their sort of long-term plan. They don't want to spend too much. I think with Scott Parker, I think there was a fair assessment that he wasn't backed anywhere near compared to some of the other clubs in the Premier League that we've seen. Even Fulham, for example, I think they've spent almost double what Bournemouth had spent. But at the same time, I think with those longer standing bubbling issues, when they bubble up over the summer, you end up in a scenario where the manager loses his job, and that's exactly what's happened. But I don't think there's no sense they'll rush in a manager today. But the way they're sort of set up means that they can still operate today, and we'll look to get that appointment in probably before the international break, all being well.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that would add an extra element to it, wouldn't it? If you had to get a manager done by
deadline day, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Well, you know what? It's not a bad idea. Get your managers in, and you have to stick with them at least until January. Some people are spoken about that. So, yeah, it's not a bad idea. Right, Peter, you head off back to your desk. What was I going to talk about? I was going to tell you about something, but I've completely forgotten what I was going to talk about. Doesn't matter. I will tell you about it in one of our later live shows. We're going to be going back to David Ornstein probably a little bit later on, maybe in about 5 minutes or so, just before we wrap up the show. And we will show you the newsroom a little bit later on in one of our live shows. But we're going to bring in one of our news editors, Luke Brown, who is joining, just meandering. Hello, Luke. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are
What
you?
time did you get in this morning?
I think it was 7 a.m. I'm not too sure. So it's all good.
It's a busy day, and we've mentioned that that the place to be in terms of keeping tabs on what's going on is the live blog. There's already been plenty of activity going on. Just to sort of round up some of the headlines so far.
Well, obviously, Ornstein had the great line on Aubameyang and how that deal is progressing. So that's been one of the kind of biggest stories of the morning. But we've had a lot of updates from all around the Premier League, from the EFL2. And without wanting to sound like too much of a company man, we do obviously have club correspondents for all of the Premier League clubs, for a lot of the EFL clubs, people covering the European leagues too. So yeah, the live blog already has plenty of updates, and it's not all just the kind of clubs you would expect. There's news from all around the country and from all across Europe too.
In terms of covering the transfer window, I mean, it's been going on. It feels like for about 3 or 4 years. This summer window. It has been a long one. What sort of stuck out for you in terms of things that have maybe surprised or come as predicted?
I'd say maybe the biggest surprise is so many of the big clubs kind of getting their primary business done early. And clubs like Tottenham, maybe some clubs you wouldn't expect to be kind of getting some signings in so early. So that was a little bit of a surprise. We were a little bit nervous that would mean the end of the window would be slightly anticlimactic because so many of the big clubs in particular were looking very strong. But I'm not so sure that's the case. It does seem like a lot of Premier League clubs in particular are kind of still waiting for the right opportunities. There maybe could be some moves today that we weren't expecting, a few days ago or a few weeks ago. So yeah, there's still plenty of intrigue and there's plenty to kind of keep across, which is obviously very exciting.
And for people that are watching, where do they go if they want to keep tabs on what's going on? How do they sort of click through and find it?
Oh, we've got so much. So I think the live blog really is the place to kind of go for all of the key news, and then that links out to all of the news stories and the features that we're obviously writing. Also, like keep across the Twitter account and all of our social channels, obviously. And it's not just about deadline day, because for all of the big moves, for all the moves that are completed, we'll have kind of profiles on the players. We'll have analysis of the clubs and how they're looking now going into the season. So yeah, there's so many ways to kind of get involved, and it would also be great to hear from people. People can email in, kind of interact with our blogging team. Obviously, people can get in touch with us on Twitter and stuff. So yeah, we'd love to hear from people too.
Luke, brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll let you get back to your get back to your desk. Nice one. There is a lot of activity going on this deadline day. Just one of the things that was mentioned there regarding the live blog. Chelsea are obviously, we know, trying to bring in a striker in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Andy Naylor's just written about the fact that Billy Gilmour, who was out on loan last season at Norwich, they are currently reluctant to let Billy Gilmour go on a permanent move to Brighton due to the club's injury problems in central midfield. That's one of the issues that is being discussed right now on, as I update it, the live blog on The Athletic. We were hoping to go back to David Ornstein, but I can see on a little screen, it's almost like I've got a little window into the world of David Ornstein, and he was on his phone, but he has just literally sat down, and I think he's placing his earpiece in as we speak. And this is almost like Soccer Saturday, but I just don't watch a football match. I watch David Ornstein. He's now just placing his earpiece in his ear. It's absolutely fantastic, Jeff. It's unbelievable. He's going to be joining us very, very shortly. You will love it. He's raised his arms. And there he is. There is David Ornstein. So we spoke to you a little bit earlier on, and I just wanted to check in with you just to sort of finish off this first live show. Has anything kicked on, or have you learned anything of note that you can tell us in good faith since we last with you?
Yeah, we can give you some exclusive news hot off the press that Stoke City are set to sign Dujon Sterling from Chelsea. He is the 22-year-old right wing back, who was actually, when coming through the youth ranks, ahead of Reece James in the estimation of many. And he has had loan spells away from the club. I think Wigan Athletic, Blackpool, and some very difficult injury and illness issues. But you speak to some people in the game that still think that this boy can absolutely fly. And now he's going to be key to Stoke attempting to get back into the Premier League, because we believe that he is having a medical at Stoke City today ahead of completing a season-long loan move to the Bet365 Stadium. And that would be a real coup for their new manager, Alex Neil. I am of the understanding that once he had spoken to Neil himself and understood the project, seen the Premier League infrastructure, the history, the potential and ambition, that he decided for Stoke, and that Chelsea found that acceptable. And also there was interest in him from a number of other clubs in England and abroad. So I know it might not be the sort of biggest name on deadline day, but I think it's a really interesting and impressive deal at the same time.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I do know full well that Watford were looking closely at Dujon Sterling. They are looking to bring in a right back or a right wing back. And it's not necessarily always the big deals and the big names that gets the blood pumping on deadline day, because fans of clubs will think we need a right back or we need a centre back. And it's sometimes those Premier League loans that are left right until the last minute that can be really, really important to clubs lower down the pecking order, can also be really, really important for those players to get sort of a developmental loan as well to really kick on in their careers. So yeah, it is an important deal at the same time. And just to finish, the sort of the headline move of the day as it stands is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. For people that weren't with you earlier on, just a quick reminder on where we stand on that, and the expectation is it is all going to go through. Do we think?
Yeah. Chelsea, Adam, are on the verge of an agreement to sign Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from Barcelona. It's been a pursuit that has been ongoing for a number of weeks, and Chelsea are now bringing this towards a conclusion. Of course, they have to, because of that 11 p.m. deadline. Their latest proposal values him at around 7.5 million euros plus Marcus Alonso going in the opposite direction. That's a reduction on what they had offered previously, and that reflects the fact that he obviously has a broken jaw and will be out of action for a while. And Barcelona need to sell him to ease their financial problems. The proposed contract is 2 years plus an additional 12 months. That additional 12 months will be based on percentage of appearances in the second year. And so these negotiations are coming to a head. It's moving in the direction of him joining Chelsea. It's not done yet. He's in Barcelona at the moment, and he would have to obviously travel over to complete that move if the agreements are struck. And I'm afraid I need to rush off now.
Perfect. All right, David, off you pop. Thank you very much indeed. Great to have a double hit with David Ornstein on this first live show on The Athletic. We've been live with you on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. We've got another live show for you at 1 o'clock. Where we will be having a whole variety of guests once again, just to keep you posted on what's been going on this morning. A reminder for you that obviously the deadline closes here in England at 11 o'clock. It's midnight in Scotland. And some of the key dates, or the key times, I should say, in Europe, Spain and France, that's 11 o'clock as well. In Italy, it's 7 o'clock. And in Germany, it is 5 o'clock. I like that. It's just more of a sort of a friendly finish to a deadline. 5 o'clock. Let's just do it for the day. Normal working hours. 5 o'clock. Done. And then we're finished. And then we can have a nice evening. Not in England. Let's go all the way until 11 o'clock. And then let's not forget, I've gone through a whole show up until now without mentioning deal sheets. Oh yes, deal sheets. I'll tell you all about them in detail. I might even show you a deal sheet in our next show. That is going to be interesting at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much for your company. Look out for an impending deal at Manchester United very, very soon indeed. And of course, follow all the live updates on the Athletic live transfer blog and the longer reads that emanate from those big stories. Thank you very much for your company, and we'll be back with you at 1 o'clock live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Take care.